Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the MMA Archive. Man, it feels so good to say that. Obviously, I say it every week, but to finally get back to covering these old events, it feels amazing. And to have a guest doing it is even fucking better. So shout out to Dale Lipan for coming on. A real big fan of what you do. So please tell the people more about what you got going on before we jump into UFC 14.
Oh yeah, so boom, the Punchlist MMA podcast. That's my baby. I co-parent said problem child with my partner in crime, Trey Van Buskirk. Completely platonic. I know it's Pride Month. We don't want to get too far into it, but yes, that's my dude. And yeah, basically what we had aspirations of being the number one MMA betting podcast on iTunes. However, we're pretty decent at betting. We're better at BSing though. So it has sort of morphed into two bros that are degenerate gamblers that are decent at it, that like to chop it up about fights and just about any and everything. No topic is off limits when it comes to us, and I will try to behave myself the best I can on your show because I'm a guest and I don't like to make a mess in other people's houses. But if you want to get a messy house, every Tuesday we do live shows on YouTube. But yeah, that's essentially it. I've been handicapping MMA for the better part of, I don't know, seriously, probably like the last 5-6 years, and I've been an MMA fan since UFC 1, which has really kind of brought this in. One of the OGs around that were renting VHS tapes from Blockbuster and then redubbing them on other VHS tapes so that I could watch them on repeat way back in the day. So I know that kind of dates me a little bit, but that's how long I've been in the game, at least
Yes,
paying
sir.
attention to it anyway. So anyway, thanks for having me on, man.
Of course, dude. I'm really excited to have you here. That pirate grind is real. You had to really shuffle back then. Now I'm complaining about finding these alternate bouts. I could only imagine for you the grind of actually getting those copies and everything to put together. So I wanted to ask, when was can you remember the very first time that you were introduced to MMA? What was the context? Because I know it was probably from one of those DVDs, but I mean VHSs.
Yeah.
So love to hear it.
So I think maybe the genesis of it was blood sport. I mean, it was MMA before we knew what MMA was. Like I spent time, like, so my parents split growing up, so I spent the summers with my dad, and my dad was like quintessential, like, 90s action guy, right? Like, so I grew up with Van Damme, I grew up with Stallone, I grew up with Arnold, Steven Seagal. Like, those were my guys, right? So like, he would go to work, I'd be at his house for the summer, and he would just rent me stacks of action movies. So I'm watching all of those. Bloodsport stood out, right? Like, man, I just love Bloodsport. So that that was really sort of the beginning of my love of martial arts and the idea of people testing each other, right? There was a whole thing there for a while where there was all these different movies that came out where it was like different styles of karate or different styles of martial arts or whatever, where everybody was competing to see who the best was, whether it was blood sport, whether it was kickboxer, best of the best. There was all the Legion. There was all this different stuff that was coming out at the same time. So that was sort of it. Fast forward a few years, my mom remarried to a guy, and he was very into traditional martial arts, and he was in law enforcement, and he was somehow introduced to um, like the very first UFC event, right? Like, they got it on pay-per-view at like a bar or something that he was at, and he came home, and the next day was like, Dale, you're not going to believe what I just saw. Like, this, you're not going to believe this. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened, you know? And I was like, what? And it came to Blockbuster to rent all these months later or whatever. And he brought it home one day with the big blue and white Blockbuster box. Dude, we threw it in the VCR, and that was it, man. I mean, it was just, after that, I was like, oh, this is like blood sport, but real life. Yes. I love this. I love this. And then it was like, as the internet came out, everything blows up, right? So now I have access to everything. So I'm trying to download events off LimeWire and Kazaa or Kazam or whatever it was. Like, all this stuff. I don't even know if you know what those are, but
I
like,
do.
yeah. So like Torrent Bay and all that stuff. I'm trying to get all the old Pancrase stuff, all the old Shoot a Fight, anything I can get my hands on that involves people punching each other in the face. I was all about it. So, and then boxing always existed in the background for me as a love as well, because it was the most readily accessible combat sport. But man, it started super early, super early.
Dude, that's awesome, man. And I want to date myself a little here too, because I never actually talked about this on the show. I've talked about why I wanted to do this, but I think it's important. I think it's important that we share, especially after you just gave us all of that. So you would not believe this. If I was to ask you to guess, you'll be far off. I'm 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got into this sport, it was literally the first event that I saw was co-main evented by Ronda Rousey versus Alexis Davis. That was the
Oh,
first full event that I
wow. Mm-hmm.
watched. So when I got into the sport, I had the same exact feeling as you, but in reverse. Like I was like, inject this shit into my veins. I've always been a big sports guy in general,
Right.
but boxing was my shit growing up. My dad's a big boxing fan. Used to box in the army, so it just something that I grew up with in my life. And as soon as I saw MMA, literally, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do now for the rest of time. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not worried about. I'm still a big sports guy. I have another sports show called the Sideline Guys that I do with my friend Derek. That I
Right.
cover general sports. But honestly, if it was up to me, like I wouldn't even watch any of that shit. Like this is what I need. And the quest, the reason why I started the MMA Archive is to learn about the history, to learn about what
Mm-hmm.
happened, to get the full idea, to see the way the sports evolved too, and comment on that, because I think there's not enough media in this space that gives due to the past, as well as how far the sport has come in 25 short years. Because damn, just I'm excited to jump into this event because dude, what we consider boring now and what
Yeah.
was boring then is two different things entirely. So really excited to get into UFC 14. But before we do, I have one more question for you. How long have you been doing Punchless MMA?
So Punch List just turned 2, I think. I think we're right. We're over 2 years old. But prior to that, I had a podcast that I did with my brother called Fistful of Cash, which was we did MMA betting. And uh, while he grew up watching mixed martial arts and boxing as well, it wasn't his love like it was mine. And when it comes to gambling and when it comes to betting, I will be the first to admit he is much better at it than I am, especially in the realms of football, basketball, stuff like that. So the idea was that him and I would do a collaborative podcast. I would talk about combat sports. He would talk about everything else. And we both knew enough about everything else that we could have an opinion on it and have it be a decently formulated opinion. But lean into the expert opinion when you have to. You know what I mean? Like we both grew up playing basketball, but I haven't watched an NBA game in probably, well, since Kobe died. Kobe's last game was the last game I watched, and then I rewatched it whenever they showed it at the 1 year anniversary of his passing. That was that's legitimately the last basketball I've watched realistically. So yeah, I mean, Punch List is about 2 years old. Podcasting, I'm probably closer to 3, 4 years. So, but
Nice.
Punch List is 2. We're in season 2 right now. So
That's awesome, dude. And I just gotta say this because I find it fucking hilarious. Shout out to Eric Betts Fights. He's the reason I got put onto your content in the very
mm,
first place. And I just want to say this because I think it's funny that I had both of you guys on, and it's happened with both of you guys. It's
mm,
so funny hearing stories that you guys have told on other podcasts, but telling me because it's like I feel like I know some shit about you that I shouldn't. Like you're telling me things, and then I'm like, yeah, I know. And I remember what Trey said, and it
yeah,
fucking brought me down, dude.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, hilarious, dude. I
yeah.
just had to mention that. Shout out to Eric Betts Fights, the dude's a legend. Looking forward to getting him on again. But with all that being said, I think it's only right that we get right into UFC 14, dude. When I first looked at this card, the first thing I noticed was Tony Frickland, because that's a name that I've heard. That's a name that I don't know who the fuck he is. I'm gonna be real. So when I realized that obviously now I'm gonna get to see his UFC debut, I get fucking jacked, man. Really excited. The first bout other night was an alternate bout in the middleweight division. Obviously, there was a middleweight tournament as well as a heavyweight tournament at this event. Tony Frickland versus Donny Chapel is the first fight, but I got so carried away, I didn't even give the background on this event. So give me 1 second here. This is UFC 14 Showdown. These names are so cringe, which is why I make sure I drop them. July 27th, 1997. Now here's something for you. I was 5 days old when this event happened. 5 days old. And when I realized that, I was like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, that'll do it.
At the Boutwell Auditorium in Birmingham, Alabama. TV announcers, same as last time, Bruce Beck, Jeff Blatnick, and then we got the ring announcer, Bruce Buffer. If I'm not mistaken, from this point on, it's all buff, baby. No breaks. So that's exciting. And obviously, Joe Rogan doing post-fight interviews. So, like I mentioned, Tony Frickland, Donny Chapel. I'm not gonna lie, dude. When I was watching this, I was like, well, it makes sense why I know who this guy is now, because just absolutely ran over Donny. And I just got to mention this because it's important. Right after the fight gets finished with what I can only describe as what's known to be a rape choke, right? That's what they call it.
Pretty much, yeah.
So right after he gets the tap, dude just punches him in the face again. Like I just found that so what the fuck? Why? But B, of course that would happen in the early UFC events, because now you think about what happened with Daly and Koscheck, and the idea of something like that happening is so far removed from the stratosphere in today's UFC.
Yeah, it was interesting. So this was also the very first event where fighters wore uniform gloves. So if you watched prior to this, you could have the mixed bag, you could have no glove. This was the very first, and even then it was gloves had to be between 4 and 6 ounces. So if you look at like, as we get later on into it, if you look at like Mark Kerr's like second bout, his gloves are like way more padded than the first one he wore. So it was like they literally could like alternate in between gloves, which I thought was really weird. But they're also like the fingerless, like leather bike rider gloves. It was a mess. Anyway, I mean, Donny, bless his heart, comes out and he's wearing like the Tough Man competition shirt that's cut, with the deep V and the whole nine. And I just want to show, I put on my On It shirt that is like 15 years old for this, because just, go way back. But yeah, I mean, Frickland isn't, he's the first guy that we're going to encounter on this card that had a career that was, you could quantify as notable. But I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think he was juiced to the gills here, and it showed by the lack of discipline. And like you said, rape choke. I mean, he literally just, the reoccurring theme of this event, tons of finishes.
Tons of juice,
tons of juice, and tons of just brute force submissions where it wasn't necessarily technique. We'll get into it later on, but Mark Kerr submitted a guy with basically by sticking his chin into his eye socket. I mean, it was just berserker style. So anyway, Tony Frickland gets the dub to start the night. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I'm so glad you circled back to that, because I usually am really buttoned up on this show. I got my notes. I read my notes. I just totally discounted that. So thank you for mentioning the glove rule. This is the first time everyone used gloves. Obviously, it wasn't the first time anyone used gloves.
Right.
Shout out to Tank Abbott on that one. But first event where gloves are required for everyone competing, as well as no hair pulling or eye gouging specifically noted in the rules, as well as no kicking on the ground, which was the first big one, which we also see come to bear later on in the event. So excited to talk about that. But there's some interesting modern context to that too. So I'm excited to get into that. But yeah, this first one was just all juice, baby, all gas, no brakes. I love too that there was that moment, like there's some semblance of today's MMA. Donny Chapel's out here throwing leg kicks and then just gets run over.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a sad night in the Chapel household, not gonna lie. But I just love too how after Frickland's like, I'm sorry, man. He's like, there ain't no sorry. Like the way he said it was so fucking hilarious. I'm just like, man,
Dude, they
I
were
guess that's how you
so
take that
salty
out.
about it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
you gotta be.
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, what do you want? You gonna? It reminds me of the closest thing I've seen to it in modern context would be the Demir Hedzovic Hanato Moicano fight,
Yep.
where Moicano chokes him out, and it's I forget how the conversation starts, but had Moicano says, I wanted to stand and bang. I wanted to punch more. And Hedzovic goes, well, you shouldn't have choked me out then.
Yeah.
It was like Donny Chapel, like, what are you going to do about it? You can say there ain't no sorry. You can say that, oh, that was dirty or whatever. But bro, you got big brother in front of, a couple thousand people. You ain't going to do anything about it. We already saw that you're not going to do anything about it. So just go ahead and take that L and keep it moving, buddy.
Hell yeah. And shout out to Big John too. Joel Hamilton was the ref for this one, which is the only other ref that has refereed up to this point. And he only does alternate bouts. Big John is still the primetime dude, which makes sense. But I found it hilarious as soon as the fight's over, out of nowhere, Big John's just in the cage, just in Frickland's face, dude.
Yeah, he's got him like pinned, like he's doing like the creepy dude where he's like holding onto the cage around him, so like Frickland can't go anywhere, and he's just like nose to nose with him. And I was like, you don't. Well, it's unheard of now to see two officials in the cage at the same time. So yeah, very interesting.
Or even to see that level of, and like obviously people take some shit nowadays, but to get that fucking close, and that's Big John's mark. I think that's a law enforcement thing, just getting in dudes' faces and wishing they'll do something about it. But yeah,
I can't remember who it was, but Big Dan did that to somebody. Mergliotta did that to somebody. Within the last few years, somebody did that where he like kind of snatched their arm up a little bit and got in their nose, put his finger up in the nose, and you're not going to do that to me. Like he just kind of like man, damn, now I'm drawing a blank. It'll come to me. I'll get it before the end of the show.
Nice. Yeah, I love that too, because real quick, another side note, shout out, once again, I already shouted out Eric, but I'm going to keep mentioning him. He always tells me, he's like, dude, how do you remember shit like this? And watching Punchlist, it's so cool now being a part of it, because literally there's been so many times I'm like, bro, how the fuck did you remember that? Because I remember that Hadjivist moment, but I wouldn't have recalled it for this. So that was a great take there. But next up, the second alternate bout in the heavyweight division, Alex Hunter versus Sam Fulton. Unfortunately, this is one of those dark bouts, so we don't get to see what happens. But I'll tell you, Alex Hunter ended up winning via TKO. This was actually Alex Hunter's UFC debut. Sam Fulton got the old whooping from Scott Ferozzo at a previous UFC. So Sam Fulton moves to 0-2. Rather uneventful there. It sucks that we don't get to see those. I still don't get that. Like, why the fuck were those never aired? And the only time we do get to see them is if there is an alternate that's forced to step up, they show it on the actual broadcast. It sucks.
Is there? I should have looked this up. Are Sam Fulton and Travis Fulton related?
That's a good shout. I have no idea,
because they look similar. Like looking at them, like, and I think they even carry, like they even have like the same sort of facial hair and everything else. I'm just wondering. I'm just, golly, man. You look at a guy like Sam Fulton, literally only had 2 fights, and took 2 L's. But I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if it's the same guy or not.
Oh yeah. But you can look into that while I'm reading off the details of this middleweight tournament bout. That's a good shout. Yuri Vaulin versus Joe Moreira. Now I need to get these notes out because I actually did some fucking research for this. So Joe Moreira, 0-1 in the UFC. He previously lost to Paul Varlins at UFC 8, RIP to the Polar Bear. This was Yuri Vaulin's UFC debut. And now this is where shit gets fun. So he fought in boxing for the vacant cruiserweight belt against one Arthur Williams. Now, this is a trivia question that you're not going to get, but I'm going to force you to answer anyway.
Fair enough.
Who did Arthur Williams defend his cruiserweight title against that is also a part of the MMA stratosphere? To my knowledge, he has not competed in MMA, but I'll give you this. He's a prominent trainer in today's MMA.
He was a cruiserweight champ. Or no, he
fought for the belt.
He fought for the belt. He fought for a cruiserweight belt. And he's still a prominent trainer.
Yep.
But we don't know if he's ever competed in a cruiserweight. Oh, such a dark division, man. Like you're like 3 pounds away from heavyweight. Boy, I'm trying to think of who is the proper age for that, and then who would be the proper size. Because cruiserweight, what's cruiser 197?
Yep.
Oh man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
dude.
You're good.
I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was like,
this is the stuff. This is the stuff I like, because he's gonna have to be like the only person that's like a trainer that's even remotely close to in age that I think is gonna match up like that has got to be like Ray Longo. And if it's not Longo, the only other person that's close is Duke Rufus, and I don't think it's Duke, because Duke had combat sports experience. I mean, obviously, through kickboxing and everything else in between. Henry Hooft is kind of older, but then, dude, I don't know. It's gonna piss me off.
I stumped you.
You're gonna make me mad as soon as you say it too. I'm not. Go ahead.
You ready?
Yeah, man.
Out of why am I now forgetting? Out of Vegas, Randy Couture's gym, Dewey Cooper fought Arthur Williams twice.
Dewey Cooper. I forgot about Dewey Cooper. Well, to be fair, Dewey Cooper might be 30 years old and he might be 65 years old. That guy's genetics are off the chart. So let's just be clear about that. But enough time, or maybe a couple beers deep, Dewey Cooper's name would have came across my lips. But yeah, thank you for rescuing me. I was drowning there. So
no, you're good, dude. I couldn't believe it when I saw it either. I didn't even know that he competed. I knew he competed in kickboxing. I didn't know he competed in straight boxing. So that was cool to see. Unfortunately, he lost both of those matches against Arthur Williams. So I just found that to be the most random connection I had to mention on the show. Right. But this fight, man, was fucking garbage. Let me just say this off rip. And I'm not someone that does this. I'm not someone like in today's MMA. It's very rare for me to feel like this fight was trash. Like it is very rare. There's moments to enjoy. This fight was absolute garbage. And it was because Yuri Valin had no semblance of a ground game and just got taken down over and over again. And this is in the era. Let me just get this out too. It was a 12-minute round and then a 3-minute overtime round. Yes. And those long rounds just lead to slog matches. And this one, honestly, is up there, in my opinion, with the historically bad fights I've seen so far.
Dude. Yeah, I would agree. This was rough. And it's one of, as we see in events as they move forward, probably one of the benchmarks in which they measured the idea of keeping the long 1-round format versus separating into the 3-5s, because in an event like this, at a sport in its infancy, you can't have these slog, like just treading in the mud style fights. You need finishes. You need a reason for people to show up. This fight, honestly, I mean, it's not the way to sugarcoat it. It sucked really bad, man. It's like really bad.
And what bothered me the most about it too is Joe Moreira clearly had an advantage on the ground. He kept bringing it there, but he wasn't doing shit with it. Like he'll land some pot shots, but he was not trying to advance for a submission even. And that just blew my head up, because dude, you clearly are light years ahead of this guy in the grappling phases of things. why not try for submissions? You're not landing damage with these fucking punches that you're doing, barely even posturing up to land them. It's like punches to the ear. It was atrocious, and I think it's entirely on Joe Moreira because, dude, get him out of there. Like, you could have easily submit him, in my opinion, from what I saw. Dude had him in double grapevine for like 8 minutes. Do you know?
Right.
Do you know how hard that is? Like, that's white belt to the max. And I'm not blaming Yuri because that is the era we're in. Obviously, everyone, either you were that dude or you had no clue. So I'm not blaming him, but you should have got him out of there, Joe. What the fuck? And then you get injured after this too. You don't even fight after this. Like, what was the problem?
Yeah. It was weird because it's one of those things, like you said, this is with these older events, you find the guys that know how to do something on the ground versus the guys that have no clue whatsoever. You know, Yuri's trying to throw strikes from the bottom. He's essentially holding Joe on top of him in a lot of positions. He has no idea how to sweep. He's not moving his legs at all. He's literally not doing anything to help his position at all. He really couldn't even surrender his back. He was just very content with just laying like a turtle. Like, most fighters now will put themselves in a bad position to try to put themselves in a good position. At a certain point, they will try to advance, you know, by hook or by crook. I'm going to try to figure it out. And Yuri wouldn't do that. And this is one of Big John was the referee for this one, was he not?
Yep.
Okay. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about this, and again, goes to show the time that we're in, he stops it for inactivity, but then both guys go back to their corners and get drinks of water.
Yep. It's like a second round.
Like around the 9-minute mark. He sends them back. He's like, oh, break. And he stands them up and he puts one in one corner and one in the other. And he just stands there and waits while Joe gets something to drink. And while Yuri's getting his face wiped off. And he's like, are you ready? Okay, you're ready? Oh, let's get it all. And you're like, and I'm like, I'm watching it and I'm like, did we start round 2? Nope. And then they just 9 minutes and 31 seconds, 9 minutes and 32. I'm like, we literally just stopped and got a water break midway through a round.
Dude, and I can't wait till that becomes something that isn't normal, because up to this point, that has been the case all the time. Whenever there's a stand-up, that's exactly what happens. It's like, all right, get a drink, wipe his face if he's bleeding, and let's get back to it. And I just love the way you did the Big John impression too, because he, like, I would imagine the juice doesn't end with the competitors. Like, Big John had to be on all the supplements back then. And I just love too that obviously he's the only ref during the main card, so he's going like 7 fights straight. By main event time, this dude is fucking leaking, just sweating. So that's another thing that I like watching during these events. Not just how the competitors are getting tired, but how Big John towards the end of these events, it looks just fucking spent. But
did you ever read Forrest Griffin's book?
No, I haven't.
So check out Forrest Griffin's book. Him and Big John were roommates for a time being when they were both cops. And he tells a story about Big John. I don't know if their house was on fire. Something happened. But he tells a story, Big John running around. Something happened that made Big John leave the house. Anyway, he does so brandishing a firearm in nothing but his underwear. So like Forrest comes home from work or something like that, and Big John's out in front of like their apartment building, and he's like in his underwear with an AR strapped around his chest, like directing traffic. Like, just Big John's out there just doing his thing. He said that him and Big John, the only thing that they had to watch on their TV was a copy of Good Will Hunting, and they would literally, like, Big John would be Ben Affleck and Forrest would be Matt Damon, and they would literally just recite the movie to each other even when it wasn't playing. It's the weirdest thing, man. So,
dude, thank you for that, because that would not have been in my fucking radar, dude. That's nuts.
Forrest Griffin's book.
Yeah, that's awesome. I need to check that out. And I just love, obviously, I don't love everything about the visual, but it's fully in his character. It makes 100% sense. And I just got to say what you want. We need guys like Big John in this world. We need some guys that are willing to do whatever the fuck it takes to bring some order. God damn it. But we'll move on. The next middleweight tournament bout, the second one of this semifinals. between Todd Butler, standing 6'1", 199, versus Kevin Jackson, 5'10", 199. Both of these guys were making their UFC debut. Kevin Jackson is notable as an Olympic gold medalist in freestyle. Second Olympic gold medalist to do his damn thing in the octagon. I'll let you take over for this one, man. This is a fucking beating, right?
Yeah, it was. But here's the thing is that Todd Butler came out and despite being named Todd, really kind of looked like he knew what he was doing. Like he had the stance was there, the footwork was decent, and then he carried the lead hand low and then was sort of like popping like a check hook to begin with. And then if you notice, Kevin Jackson, while being a stud, really had sort of no idea how to raise any sort of guard. So right before the initial interaction that resulted in Jackson getting Butler down, Todd Butler kind of like does like sort of like a almost like a gazelle punch where he like closes the distance, shoots that right hand right down the middle, and he tags Kevin Jackson. Like he tagged him. If he could have pivoted away from that or just been able to pump the jab as opposed to he was carrying that lead hand so low so he wouldn't get taken down. I mean, it was like this was probably the first fight of the night where you're like, okay, these guys know combat. Like they're not a stranger in their entirety to combat, and the grappler and the striker, they sort of know what to expect from one another. Now, ultimately, it results in Kevin Jackson taking Todd down and pummeling him, but Olympic gold medalist. And then, if you wonder what Kevin Jackson's like after UFC career, he's at the Olympic Training Center in Arizona for wrestling for years. And he's now, I don't know if he's the head coach or he's the assistant coach at University of Michigan for wrestling. The dude's an absolute legend in the sport of wrestling. 1992 gold medalist. I think he got hurt in the trials for 96, so he didn't compete in 96, and then this event obviously 97. So the dude's an absolute stud, and I think at this point probably the most credentialed combat sports athlete, if we're putting combat sport wrestling in the realm of combat sports, probably the most credentialed one to compete. I mean, that was a him signing and then competing was a very big deal at this event. So it was good.
Dude, thank you for that context because I would have had no clue. I just always assumed that it was always a big deal between him and Schultz when they competed. It was like, oh shit, we got an actual fucking athlete here, and that was hard to imagine at one point. But now, like you said, dude. 100% spot on. That's literally what I wrote in my notes. He eats right hand, but ends up pushing him back to the fence. The way he even like approached the stand up, just entirely upright. Like if there was any sort of reactive shot in his opponent, he might have been able to get taken down himself, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, I agree, man. You thought, you hoped. I don't know if it's just me, but I tend in striker versus grappler matchups, I tend to root for the striker, even if I'm not a fan of them, just because I feel like we both know what's happening here, and if either guy is going to get their way, it's most likely going to be the grappler. But when the striker's doing it, it's like, holy fuck, like you feel the momentum of that moment. And I agree. We were this close to having that momentum, and Kevin Jackson just stole it from us. But dominant as hell, dude. The way he flattened him out too when he got the back. Dude, and I don't blame him for tapping either. Everyone in this era of MMA, dudes is tapping the strikes left and right. I personally don't have an issue with it. There's certain contexts where it is bad. I would argue this one could have lasted a second longer too. But hey, when you get flattened out like that, you ain't getting out of that shit. So I respect it.
No, he wasn't getting out. He had the legs pushed back, the whole nine. I mean, there was nothing he was going to do to get out of that position. And to be honest with you, a lot of these guys, even if they were, seasoned martial artists or whatever, a lot of guys didn't have a ton of experience up until this point at this stage, at this level, or at at this intensity, right? Like I'm sure Todd Butler did some sparring to get ready for this. Like with enough time, I'm sure there was some sparring that took place. But like if you think of like, when we'll talk about him here in a second, like if you're looking at guys like Modi Horenstein, right, that came out wearing the kimono, his preparation for this fight was toe tapping other dudes in kimonos. It wasn't take me on the ground, let me fight out of bad positions, nothing like that. So when Todd Butler gets taken down, put on his belly and starts getting, elbows and fists rained down on the back of his dome, I don't want to be in here anymore. Like, I don't want to be in here more. I don't want to be in there anymore. It's over with, man. You don't need to hit me. A guy like Kevin Jackson, the juice is rolling, hits me in the back of the dome twice. I don't want to be in here more, man. I'm good.
Dude,
I'm good.
I'm out of here. Yeah,
Live to fight another day.
I respect it 100%. And I think the corner threw the towel in too. So
yeah, right at the same time.
It's and hey, I wish that era of MMA still exists.
Yes.
You don't see that nearly as often as you should, in my opinion. But we'll move on from that somber note. The first heavyweight tournament bout of the night, Mark Kerr. Speaking of juice, man, there's no way they had him listed at 6'1", 225. There's no fucking way that man was 225, right? Like he was at least 285. The dude was huge. Like the dude is huge, bro. Against Modi Horenstein, I think this is notable to add. Obviously, this was Kerr's debut. Modi was 0-1 in the UFC, previously lost to Mark Coleman at UFC 10. So, dude, I mean, when your first two fights are Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr, I would never fucking think of doing this shit again. Why? Like, I don't know if this was his last fight, but I don't fucking blame him if it was.
And here's the crazy part is Mark Coleman is in Kerr's corner for this fight because Kerr is a Coleman disciple. So it was like, at the time, there was a brief moment in time where Mark Kerr was considered the best fighter on the planet Earth. Like there was a brief moment where between the UFC and then Pride, he was the grand poobah of fighting, right? And if you watch, if you've never seen the documentary The Smashing Machine, it is mandatory viewing for every MMA fan. It's absolutely there's two things that I think every person that loves this sport should do. You should watch The Smashing Machine and you should read A Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan, because it peels back the curtain on basically the pioneering darkness that brought this sport to light, where you see these guys that they love something with such an intensity that they're willing to destroy themselves to be the best at it, even though they know that something may never come from it. Like there's just this innate, it's almost like the get rich or die trying, but it's like, be the best or die trying, right? And sometimes, in like the instance of Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr, if that means juicing yourself to the point where your heart explodes. But if you read Fighter's Heart with Sam Sheridan, where he goes all over the world and interviews people that are obsessed with combat sports, the lengths that people are willing to go and put themselves in to basically to prove themselves in the sport. And if you watch The Smashing Machine, you can see the fall of a guy that's at just the height of what was once skill and potential that is basically tipped into the darkness, right? Like the pain meds are too much. The roids are too much. I'm a step slower. Everybody's gotten better. And you can kind of see that flip, just the car starts to tip over the precipice of the cliff. That's what the Smashing Machine is. And it's so good. But at this point, all that to say, Mark Kerr was like, this was Tyson knocking people out in 19 seconds kind of stuff. Everybody's like, you've got to see this guy fight. To your point, he is aesthetically the scariest guy that you're going to see, and he's literally butchering people by brute force. We got to see this. And just bless their heart, after Mark Coleman, they give Modi Horenstein, which has got to be the least fighterish name on the planet Earth. They feed him to Mark Kerr, and they did exactly that. They fed him to basically a silverback gorilla, man. Yeah, it was bad, real bad.
Dude. And the finish ended up coming from half guard, but it didn't fucking matter. It didn't matter. Like, this dude was posturing up in guard and just dogging him on the ground. Exactly. Just full Zangiefing him out there. It was nuts. And honestly, what I really love about doing the show this way, obviously, I don't have no fucking clue who these guys are. The only time I've seen Mark Kerr was in highlight reels of Pride, where he was getting knocked out. So I didn't know, like, I don't know the mystique. I don't know the growth. So that's what makes this super exciting for me too, getting to see the rise of these guys.
Yeah.
And dude, it was funny. When I was actually talking to once again, last time I did this show with someone else was Eric, and we were talking about how, dude, I don't know who the fuck is going to beat Mark Coleman. Like, that's the way I looked at it when I was watching Mark Coleman fight. And I got the same feeling after watching this, dude. I'm like, nobody's beating this guy. And him and Mark Coleman aren't going to fight. So we'll see how that turns out. But obviously, we got a little more to talk about, to talk about more different matchups. But man, this was a fucking, like you said, just a squash match of the greatest heights. And I would say most of the fights during this night, there wasn't much parity. Like, I give out my own awards at the end of these shows. There's a fight of the night, performance of the night for KO, performance of the night for submission. Fight of the night was hard to figure out. Like, it was really hard for me to figure out. And mine is probably going to be a little bit of a hot take, so I'm excited for that. But dude, all of these were just fucking destroyer moments. So shout out to Mark Kerr for absolutely just running through this guy. But
can I say one thing about the Mark Kerr thing real quick? I know he's got 2 fights, so I can bring this up later. But this is also, if you go back and you find Mark Kerr when he fought Vale Tudo, literally, like, his second fight, the guy just left, like in the middle of the fight, like, he's just like, I'm good. Like, in the middle of the fight, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore, and literally got out of the ring and left. And you're like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight this guy anymore. So just that's just you
don't blame him. I don't fucking blame him, dude.
You imagine now, like, if you're watching the UFC and there's just a fight that's just not going away, and just freaking, like, Eddie Wineland just climbs over the cage and he's like, I'm out, man. I'm not fighting Sean O'Malley anymore. I'm out, man. He just rolls out like, this guy's too fast. I'm out.
Dude, the only thing we've seen remotely close is Rashkov. And even then, that's completely different. Completely different. Yeah. Like, that was crazy too. I mean, if you take that corner audio of Rashkov quitting on the stool and you put some sad music in there, you would have thought that man died. You would have thought he fucking died the way and I could only imagine, I'm sure that's a moment that haunts him too. So I ain't trying to bag on the guy too much. But dude, I respect that 100%. Have you ever seen that video in boxing? I couldn't even tell you the name because it was regional. But he did the same thing, dude. As soon as the first round bell rang, this dude was just like,
he left. Yeah. They were in New York somewhere. What was that? It was a heavyweight. He was fighting the I don't mean interrogatory. He was fighting the one African guy. I cannot remember it. Like, he's of African, like, descent. I cannot remember.
I can't either.
I can't remember his name, but he's a big boy. He was. They thought he was going to be something for a minute. He was murking people, and they got in there and they did, like, the face off. They turn around, bell rings, and he's like, "All right, I'm out." Under
the rope, and just walk. Didn't even look back. His corner's still in the corner. He's gone. Yeah.
And the guy's just like, "What are we doing here?" They're like, "You win, bro. I guess. I mean, we're done.
I still get paid, right? Like, that would have been my first thing.
Yeah, for real. Can I get paid, please?
Hilarious, bro. Second heavyweight tournament bout of the night. Daniel Bobbish. Now these stats are adding up now. 6'1", 310. He didn't even look 6'1" either. The dude is fucking huge. Cue ball moment. Just a cue ball moment. Brian Johnston. I just want to say this as well. Brian Johnston, 6'4", 232, AKA product from the old days. It's always cool to see a young Javier Mendez in the corner in Brian Johnston fights. Brian Johnston was very svelte. Brian Johnston was the first guy in watching these old school events that I first saw, and I'm like, this dude is gonna be champ, right? Like, and it just didn't turn out that way at all. But as soon as I saw his debut, I'm like, this dude has to be good, right? And I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a very good career when you consider what was going on back then, but nowhere near the level I thought it would be seeing his debut. But in this fight, just to give a little background, Dan Bobbish, this was his UFC debut, while Johnston is 2-3 at this point, with his last fight being Ken Shamrock at UFC 11 and a half. So I just want to say this real quick. The fact that this fight was in my running for fight of the night makes it clear that a lot of these were one-sided fucking fights. Like, let's just say that. But the first, what was it, 20 seconds? Fucking fun, right? Like, both of these guys landed big shots on the feet. Really had you wondering. Obviously, Brian Johnson is just a fucking unit. So anytime he touched him, Johnson just sort of flew a little into the side. Bobbish, I meant to say. But man, obviously the way this thing turned out was hilarious. The fact that he ended up getting the takedown towards the cage and then finished them with a forearm choke. I just got to say, in my opinion, this one was even better than the one that we saw from who's that heavyweight in the UFC now? Romanov, Alexander Romanov. It was way better than that one, because obviously he held it, but he was sort of posting on it.
Yeah.
My man's Daniel Bobbish went full neck into it. Like, he treated it like it was an arm triangle. For a second, I was unsure. Like, I had to watch it back to make sure that it was a forearm choke. But you can literally see Johnston's head fucking protruding through the cage because of how much force Bobbish was putting on him there. Just nuts. I hate that that was such a big thing at this period of time. I mean, another one that comes to mind is Steve Jenham versus Tank Abbott. Just absolutely got his head fucking sent through the cage. And it leads to some tap outs. But this was fun while it lasted. But awesome submission there, if you ask me.
It's one of those things too with Bobbish where it's one of the last times we see just the tough man approach. Like, Bobbish, not a trained fighter. Like, I think he was less than a month removed from being cut from an NFL team.
Yep, the Browns.
Yeah. So, like, he had just gotten cut and he's just a big dude and literally comes out and, we see it with these early events. Guys don't know how to hold their hands. They don't even really know how to throw a punch. Bobbish is literally running forward with it, like, both hands together, but like out in front of him a little bit. Like he's throwing punches almost like an old school, like, rock'em sock'em robots kind of thing. Like, he's got his hands staggered and he's kind of doing one of these numbers, trying to get close so he can get a hold of Johnston. It's just very, like, strange, right? And this is one of those wins where it just basically came by brute force. I know I'm just beating the same phrase over and over again, but there was no skill here and it was all will. That choke wasn't even something that I think he even realized was a choke, just so much as was like pure adrenaline. I'm a big guy on top of a bigger guy and I'm in a fight. I'm just going to try to fucking break you. And just, he tapped out, and that just happened to be the end of it. Like, you see it like all the time. White belts or guys their first day on the mats in wrestling practice, they don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to grab a hold of stuff and rip it. They don't know what direction. They don't understand joint mechanics or anything, like the way the blood flows. Nothing. They're just like, I'm gonna break something, and you're like, bro,
chill.
Chill. Yeah. And then two, that's not how it works. But then if you're 310 pounds, you can do that a little bit. There is a little bit. There is an element of this won't work on another person that's 310 pounds, but on my 200-pound self, yes, this will work. So, but that's what we saw here.
And against someone that I would say has definitely some combat experience, definitely trains out of a good team. So I agree with all of that. I kind of like moments like that, because obviously nothing like that remotely exists today, like at all. Even in heavyweight, like nothing like that remotely exists. So seeing weird shit like that is always fun. But we'll move on from that one. We've got the middleweight tournament finals next I love the way they sort of set these things up too, because they try to give as much time in between for guys to get the and get ready to fight again. But even in the last one with Vitor, like sometimes these dudes have like 15 minutes between fights, and it's like, how? Like, I respect it. But this one, they got a little bit of time. They showed the original alternate bout between Tony Frickland and whatever the fuck his name is at this point. And after that, we finally get into the tournament finals. So Tony Frickland 5'10", 189 versus Kevin Jackson 5'10", 199. Off rip, it's as simple as this. Tony Frickland's trying to stay outside, throw some leg kicks. Jackson catches a kick, takes him down, and does the same exact thing. I just want to say this too. I need to mention this. Frickland did a very good job trying to scramble out of that takedown. He almost got out. Like, he was this close to getting out, but Kevin Jackson was able to stay on top, pull him back into back mount, and then from there just flattened him out, greasy again, and then was able to secure the choke.
Yeah, I think that's fair. This is we're starting to see at this point, and it's elements of it have shown themselves in earlier events, but when you start bringing in guys like Jackson, you start to see the role that wrestling plays in, or is going to play in, mixed martial arts moving forward. It is. And I've said this ad nauseum, and it's not a hot take because other people have said it too, but it's the single most important skill that you can have in a fight, especially a mixed martial arts bout with rules. It's the single most important skill you can have because you determine where the fight takes place. And when you have a guy that's an Olympic gold medalist, if he wants this fight to be on the ground, it's going to be on the ground. And that's it. You can fast forward to Khabib, you can go backwards to Cejudo, you can look at anything, George St. Pierre. It doesn't matter. At any moment in time throughout the sport, present to past, when an elite wrestler gets in there, you fight where he wants you to fight, and that's it. And any time that you've ever seen somebody not like the way things are going on the hands, what do? I'm going to see if I can't out wrestle you, because if I can out wrestle you, I can stop what you're doing. It's a basic rudimentary principle. When things aren't going well, I got to find something that works. And Kevin Jackson, like you said, they're circling to the outside. Frickland's got better footwork. He's visibly faster. He's beating up those legs. Again, to the training. Is Kevin Jackson training how to check leg kicks? Has he ever been kicked in the legs prior to tonight? Probably not. And he's out there getting kicked with wrestling shoes on. So he's like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to try to hold on to your leg. I'm going to swing you to the ground. There was a little bit of a scramble, but you're not going to out scramble an Olympic gold medalist. It's not going to happen. And then ultimately the finish comes very soon thereafter. But again, it's one of those things. It's like you can see all these little breadcrumbs as these events happen, that you can see what's going to shape the future of the sport. And elite level wrestling is a reoccurring theme, no matter what.
And juice. Don't forget the juice.
And don't forget the juice too. Yeah, the juice helps a lot, man. It really does.
Fuck USADA, man. I'm still on that camp, and I don't care who hears it. Fuck USADA. But we'll move on from that one, dude. I just gotta say, Kevin Jackson winning this tournament off rip. I'm like, make a belt for this dude. Like, make a belt for this dude. Like,
they give him the little thing, the little
medallion.
The dude wore a legit gold medal around his neck in the Olympics, and you're gonna give him, like, from the the
dollar store
Tom's Trophies on Main Street. You're giving him the. Come on, man.
Dude, disrespectful. And then Art Davies presenting it like it's some fucking crown jewel. Oh, man. It makes me sick. I hate those fucking ceremonies because it's so cringe. Like, we don't even hear about Art Davies until dude comes out with the fucking the fucking medallion. But we'll leave it at that. These tournaments are always fun. I just, honestly, I'm not going to lie. As these are progressing, I'm kind of missing everyone in this event is in a tournament vibe. Like these smaller tournaments, although I would argue it leads to people being more refreshed and better fights because of it. But I'm kind of missing the everyone is in play kind of thing, because
Yeah.
now I feel like in a way they're sorting out the weight classes, they're figuring things out. It used to be called lightweight. How the fuck is 199 lightweight? Obviously they're calling it middleweight now, which is hilarious. But yeah, all the divisions are getting sorted out now, and it's either you're big as fuck or you're in this division, and that's all we got at the moment. But yeah, I hope moving forward, because I have no clue. I hope they make a belt for that division, and things get sorted out for middleweight. But we'll see. Time will tell. But next up, the heavyweight tournament final. We got Mark Curse, 6'1", 285, because I'm not telling these lies on the show. Daniel Bobbish, 6'1", 310. Um, I just love that the announcer said, we got a quarter ton of
Yeah.
weight in the octagon at the moment. And they're sitting there. Shout out to them too. They're sitting there matching polos. I'm like,
Bro.
oh man, it's crazy how much shit has changed. These dudes are sitting here matching purple polos with the white horse, dude. That's some shit. That's middle school era Chris for you right there. Hilarious. But this fight, dude, Kerr opens up with two huge leg kicks, like huge leg kicks. Like you heard them shits, and I know Daniel Bobbish probably had that same realization, like, holy fuck, I wish I could take you down.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't his option there. And then eventually just gets bowled over with the first double leg that Mark Kerr decides to shoot. And I just gotta say, idea that kicking to a grounded opponent is banned, but you can knee someone in the head at any point from the ground is so fucking dumb. I still feel, and by the way, I got a college degree covering Risen. I'm still a fan of that rule set. I would rather that rule set be the case in MMA today across the board. But have some fucking consistency here. We're letting Mark Kerr get in side control and knee dudes into next week, and you can't kick someone on the ground. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's again, so much of it is just trying to figure it out, you know, and there's, I think some of it stems from if, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way to equate it. Like if you're a gamer, right? Anybody that's ever played Halo, if you're familiar with the noob combo, or if you're a Call of Duty guy, the noob tube, if that's your thing, if you have something that works, you're afraid that people are just going to kind of spam it, you know, and exploit the rule set. So that with these earlier events, we see them sort of shifting things around a little bit, trying to figure out what allows one for action, but two, you don't want to give anybody just this crazy advantaged position, right? And you don't know what you're going to find yourself, what positions you're going to find yourself in, right? If you've ever been in a gym and you've sparred with somebody and it's their first day sparring or they're relatively new, you'll get hit with something you wouldn't normally get hit with. Or if you're rolling with somebody, somebody might get you in a position that you wouldn't otherwise. But how'd your little spazzy ass get me in the spot? Like, what is how are you behind me? Like, what did you do to get there, right? You know, say no kicking a downed opponent, you know, you have no idea whether a guy like, I don't know, we'll just use Todd Butler, even though he lost. You have no idea whether Todd Butler is going to like do a leg trip and get Kevin Jackson down on the ground and just start spamming kicks to Kevin Jackson while he's on the ground. So Kevin Jackson can't get up because we don't know what Kevin Jackson's ability to post and get up and move away is. You have no idea. I mean, we just don't know what it is. I mean, you look at earlier events, we're seeing guys in the crucifix position just taking repeated nut shots over and over and over again. They can't get out of it. Or Gary Goodrich, reverse crucifix across the back, throwing elbow. Like there's just, you don't know what people are going to get themselves into. So the rule set was constantly evolving. I feel at this point we should have like a unified rule set. I know they say that there's a unified rule set, but it's only unified in the sense that we claim it's unified. It's not adopted everywhere. So it's kind of like, I don't know, a woman in on Earth winning Miss Universe. we're the only we're
How
the
do
only
you know?
we're the
How
only
do you know?
planet. We're the only planet, man. So yeah, I mean that's really kind of like that's it for the unified rule set. We're the only ones doing it, so I guess it's unified. I don't
Hmm.
know. But
a, a great example of that change too was for a brief time, I think it was two events, kicking with wrestling shoes was banned.
yeah,
So
if you're
yeah, and
wearing
then they
shoes, you
just
can't
brought
kick.
that shit back out of nowhere, and made it seem like it was no big deal. Well, now you could kick, no big deal. So
Alabama
yeah.
doesn't care about shoes. You can kick each other. Okay,
Exactly. All right, thanks.
sure, I
um
guess.
yeah, and I like that too, how at this period literally I have to preface these episodes by explaining the fucking rules because it's changing that often. But yeah, awesome. Honestly, both of these, it felt like the goddamn Hammer House show. Like everyone from that team is just dominating, and you have no doubt on what the match is going to look like. So it really set up this finals in a great way. Honestly, I'm here watching. I'm ready to see another fucking slaughter. I'm ready to see a part 3 of this. And of course, that's not how things turned out. So we got our heavyweight title fight. It's really interesting the way these things are distinguished. I mean, you go from a heavyweight tournament final to a heavyweight title fight.
Right.
Just fucking weird. But Mark Coleman, the champ at 6'1", 245, coming up against Maurice Smith, 6'2", 220. Coleman is 7-0 in the UFC. Won 3 main events. This is key because, in my opinion, at this up to this point, he's the most prolific champion the UFC has had. Definitely surpassed what Gracie was able to do as far as his runs. But uh, as soon as this one started, man, I thought that I was waiting for the moment for Coleman to get knocked out when I
Mm,
first was watching this, because obviously I knew that Maurice Smith won because that was something that I heard.
right.
But I didn't think that it would play out like this. Now this is the first time, I have to admit, where there is a sort of semblance of what it is to be well-rounded.
Mm,
um and this isn't well-rounded. Like, once again, I encourage everyone that is not a fan of today's boring fights, check this one out, because a lot of it was just getting stuck in guard, or just holding on and being thankful that Coleman is getting tired, because if not, you were in Shitsville. There was a
yeah.
lot of moments here where Maurice Smith just ended up getting stuck on bottom, and he did a good job, way better than previous competitors, at retaining his guard and getting back to full guard. That's not common up to this point in the UFC, to be honest. And he did a very good job of making Coleman work over and over again and making him earn it. And I just got to say, shout out to Mark Coleman. This is me. I go to Tiger Schulman's. This is me. In between that fucking bell goes off, I'm there. I'm Mark Coleman, bro. I'm standing there, just
Yeah.
barreled over, trying to get every last ounce of breath before the next moment of engagement. This was fucking a bizarre fight, dude. Like, this was weird. This was very weird. And I thought it would be better, just because I knew the outcome. I thought he was going to knock him out or something. This was a very boring fight too, but this still wasn't worse than the Joe Moreira fight. That takes the
Mm,
cake. But Maurice Smith stuck the damn course after getting dominated in that opening round. What was it, 12 minutes straight? No, it was
yeah.
15 minutes
No,
straight.
15. Yeah, 15.
And then two 3-minute overtime rounds after that.
Right.
And it was like two different fights. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as those overtime rounds started, I like some of the things he was doing on the feet. This is the first time I could remember seeing feints,
Yeah.
especially from the jab leading into leg kicks. He landed some calf kicks there, which is just so funny because now it's like calf kicks is this mythical thing. It took the
Right.
sport by storm. Like, bro, Marco Huas was throwing calf kicks back in the day.
Right.
Nothing is new, as is said in literature. Nothing is new. We're
Yeah.
just all taking shit from the past. But uh, shout out to Maurice Smith for turning it around after getting dominated early on the ground, and just putting on a display of striking. And I just got to say, I was shocked, honestly, that the judges got it right. This was a unanimous decision for Maurice Smith. For some reason, I just felt like they were going to give it to Coleman, even though I knew that Coleman lost. I was like, it just makes sense that that's how it would go, because you would think 15 minutes is more important than 6, right?
Right. Yeah, you would think. But it was we we have this idea as far as judging goes, as who's winning as the fight ends is being weighted more, and Pride had a lot to do with that. I mean, at this point, it wasn't factoring, but we see with a lot of Pride events that they would score fights like that, like who's winning as time expires. Oftentimes end up winning the fight. I have a couple things I've been trying to take mental notes while you're talking. Real quick to circle back to the co-main, Mark Kerr won by chin to the eye, which I don't think has ever
Yes.
happened before. We need that's
It
worth
has
mentioning.
actually. It
Oh, it
has.
happened.
Yep, it
Somebody else
has.
won by chin to the eye. How do I not know that? Where?
Yep.
Who? What was the other fight?
I'm gonna look it up while you talk, but continue.
Okay, okay. And two, you said you train at Tiger Schulman. Um, is Jimmy Rivera still out? Is he still training out of that gym, or did he move?
So from what I know, the only person I have ever seen is Lyman Good. He does
Right,
a lot of the intermediate stuff there.
right.
I'm pretty sure they train under Tiger Showman, but in a different
Yeah,
facility.
gotcha. Um, I interviewed Jimmy one time, right, like as he was getting ready to teach the kids class at whatever facility he was at. But I just saw a thing the other day. He's fighting for bare knuckle. I didn't even know he got cut.
Yep.
I completely
He
missed that.
didn't.
Like,
He signed with them.
oh, so he didn't get cut. So he just
Mhm.
free agency signed with them.
Get that bag, brother. Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay. So that completely flew under my radar. I had no idea. Then I'm seeing Jimmy Rivera's face on a BKFC thing, and I'm like, Jimmy Rivera. That's a okay. All right. Because that was that dude for a while, man. I really
Yep.
thought something was going to happen. Like that's a anyway.
Dude, I'm
Uh,
Puerto Rican. That's my dad's favorite fighter. He doesn't watch MMA, but every time Jimmy Rivera would fight, he's like, "Is my Boricua fighting?" I'm like, "Yes, he is. You got to watch." And he literally came, and it's not often that he watches main events. Sometimes we try to force him. He shows
yeah.
up for Amanda Nunes. That's another one he always shows up
Right.
for. But he showed up to watch him fight Marlon Moraes. And let's just
Mm,
say after that, he doesn't ask to watch the fights no more, but he
mm.
always asks how's Jimmy Rivera doing, which is
Oh my
hilarious.
gosh. What about Shane Burgos? Does he like Shane Burgos?
I honestly I don't think that the Puerto Rico connection is as strong, but I always am like out of the Bronx, Hurricane Shane. I
Right.
always try to pump him up.
Okay. Sorry. Well, I'll get off topic, man. I'll start
I
ranting
like
about
it.
all
You're
kinds of stuff.
good.
All right. So I think it. Oh, this is the other thing I want to know too. You were talking about the well-roundedness of Maurice Smith. So Maurice Smith was champ in a league or another promotion that like went defunct right around the time this started. I think it was most extreme fighting championships. I feel like extreme was
Sounds
in
about
there
right.
somewhere. Something extreme fighting. Anyway, he was their champ. They went under. They bring him in. It was kind of like a champ versus champ thing. But what was funny is what you said. He was having a lot of success with the kicks and the feints because the next time we see Mark Coleman, he fights Pete Williams. And if you've never seen Pete Williams knock out Mark Coleman, it is one of the single most brutal knockouts I've ever seen. And it comes from, it's all predicated off the kick. Pete Williams exhausted Mark Coleman. He starts beating the legs up. Mark thinks he's going low. He goes high. Wrestling shoe laces across the eyes, bro. Just laced them and just huh, sleeps them. I mean, it is one of the it's on the level of Rashad Evans, Sean Salmon level.
Mm.
Just about as flush of a head kick as you're ever going to see. But I can't help but think that Pete Williams saw the success that Maurice Smith had with the kicks, with the feints, getting Mark Coleman to bite on him, and then ultimately getting that head kick knockout. But anyway, it it showed, like you said, that there were levels to the game, and there was a difference between the most elite and the guys that were still just trying to figure it out. And this was a prime example of that. They were both these guys were championship caliber for a reason, and
Mhm.
and it showed in this event.
Hell yeah. And for such a boring fight, there was momentum. Like, it was exciting to watch. It was, you was wondering, like, you were just waiting for the moment to happen. That's how it felt. And the way that he got out of the way of that head kick that barely grazed him, and Big John still stopped it to say, hey, he was on the ground. Meanwhile, dude was nowhere near the fucking ground. His knees were already up, his hands were already off the ground. And in today's MMA, obviously that's the criteria. So I'm watching this, I'm like, he stopped it to say, hey, he wasn't up yet. Meanwhile, he was clearly up in today's MMA. So that's hilarious.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you got guys like Eric Anders kicking Tim Williams to, bro, sent him to the ether with that head kick. And I still, to this day, feel like Tim Williams' hand was on the ground. I know they try to do like the sports science zoom in on it, and his fingers were yay high off the dude. But you can't tell me Eric Anders knew that. Exactly. Eric Anders just tried to kick that man's head off. Like, Eric Anders was down to catch a charge that night. That's what happened. And it just happened to play on his favor, man. That's it.
Dude had teeth marks in his shin. Another one that was just like that too. Cheyenne Buys. Who was that against? I think it was Viana, right?
Was it Viana or was it Gloria? Was it Gloria DePaula?
Yeah, that sounds right. You're right.
Yeah.
That's hilarious, dude. Hey, honestly, this fight, this Mark Coleman Maurice Smith fight, I feel like watching it in this context, it makes it so much more trash than it was in the moment. Like, I could imagine this being like a holy shit moment. For me, it was more so like a changing of the guard. Like, I feel like from this point forward, everyone, obviously, it was already is what's being asked of you to be able to compete on the ground and on the feet. Right. But I feel like at this point, if you're not training on the ground, like, why are you even showing up to? Like, that's just really what it comes down to, because that there's going to be a lot of guys that are just trying to wrestle you, and at least trying to survive in those moments is what's going to give you a chance in that time of the UFC.
Well, we had this as far as passing of the guard was, this was when there was a whole slew of guys that had like this weird love-hate relationship with the UFC, and we see them at this time period where they're there for a few events. Maybe they win a belt, maybe they don't. Then they go fight in Pride, and they become these mythical creatures. And then the UFC brings them back, and then obviously it's to some mixed success. But like, you've got Mark Coleman is case in point. You've got Chuck Liddell. You've got BJ Penn. You've got Anderson Silva. Like, you've got these guys that, are crafting, hell, even Overeem. Now, Silva and Overeem weren't UFC leave for Pride, come back, but the idea remains the same. They were like this mystique from this faraway land where these giants roam, and everybody's juiced to the gills, and the rule set's kind of shifty, and we're not really sure what's happening, and they're fighting in superdomes in front of 100,000 people, and on what is happening, and they're coming in, and it's this very weird thing. Like, you got guys like Anderson Silva fights Pride, but then he comes and he fights Chris Lieben at the Ultimate Fighter finale, and everybody acts like, oh, he's fighting Chris Lieben. Chris Lieben's going to destroy him. How did that go? How did that go? Let me just rewind that a little bit. You got, I don't know, man. God, geez, just BJ comes in, wins a belt, leaves, go fight, like, gets fat, fights Lyoto Machida at heavyweight, comes back, wins the belt again. You're like, what is happening? It's just, there's so many of these weird instances. But yeah, Mark Coleman, to keep it on topic, loses to Pete Williams, loses to Pedro, drops 3 in a row, right? Like, he's the golden boy, like you said, most accomplished champion up until that moment, drops 3 in a row, and he's like, I'm going to Pride. And he goes to Pride for what, the next 8-9 years or whatever, beats almost everybody, stays juiced to the gills,
probably juices more,
comes back and gets beat again. And then it was just like this, the curse of the octagon or something, man. I don't know. He just, Anyway,
That's so true. And I'm so excited for that because to give you a little context, I've got all these events. I'm including, please let me know if I'm missing out on any big promotions, but I got Bodog on the list. I got Pride. I got Bellator. I got fucking Strike Force. I've got all these things listed by the dates in which they happen. So I think I got 2 more UFC events straight. And then Pride is finally in the fold. So I get some mix up here.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited to get that context for sure.
You got to get the Affliction MMA event
Yes, that's
with
in
the
there as well.
with the Phantom knockout that
Mhm.
nobody knew what happened. It was just like Andre jumps and somebody's asleep, and we're like, I don't understand what happened. It was like even on the replay, it was over. It was so weird because it was 2 events like that where it happened. Because it was him and the Paul Buentello fight where Buentello got knocked out, and nobody knew that Paul Buentello got knocked out. Like he literally got hit, falls over the back, and then he's laying on the ground, and McCarthy waves the fight off, and everybody's like, "What the hell happened?" It's because Buentello got slept. Another guy that was cross promotion with success, Paul Buentello.
Nice.
Bro,
Yeah, I think that's what we're
I
missing
haven't said in a
today.
long time.
Dude, that is what we're missing today. If we had a real number two, because don't get me wrong, there's some guys in Bellator that I think will do well in the UFC. Case in point, well, Michael Chandler. But honestly, he got given a good road. But anyway, my point in saying that is there's no real number two. There's no real like,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know. They got these weight classes where I feel like their champions could compete. No other organization has that at the moment, and I need that shit. I need it in my veins.
Well, you need a couple $1 billion to be honest. I mean, truthfully, that's what it is. You need a couple billion, and I think the closest you're going to get to it, and it's going to take some years, is probably Eagle. Eagle
Mm.
will have to at some point in time rebrand, and Khabib will have to use that, you know, Chechen warlord money
Money.
and lure some real talent over. At us, you have the UFC's got everybody in such a weird spot because you do have to kind of recycle some of the older talent. You do have to do some JDS versus Jorgen De Castro kind of stuff because the UFC, and this is where Dana White is a evil genius, is that he will sign you to these deals and then they'll be 100% exclusive and then he won't book you for a fight.
For years. Ask Nate Diaz.
He just won't book you. He just won't book you. He'll say contractually I'm required to offer you 2 fights a year, and he'll offer you a rabid gorilla and a werewolf, and you'll say no to both, and he'll go, all right, well I met my contractual obligation and you don't do it, so now you're not fighting. So like George St. Pierre could go make a king's ransom boxing, but Dana won't let him go. Dana will not let him go. He just, I'm just going to hold on to you. Guys like, you know, that say that they like Cejudo. Cejudo, I retire, right? If you were genuinely retired and genuinely a free agent, he could have went and did anything else. He could have went and boxed. He could have went and did, but why isn't Henry doing that? Why is he begging the UFC to bring him back and pay him a king's ransom? Because he contractually still has fights there. He can't do anything about it. So the UFC hems everybody up. So they're forcing you to fund and funnel your league with wash talent or talent that's on the downslope. Um, it's tough. It's going to take a couple $1 billion, and you're going to need a team of talent scouts that are willing to go out there and put some shit together. And you need a Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner moment in order to get people to pay attention to you. So.
Yep. And that's a perfect way to put it. My favorite thing to do to newer MMA fans is just to explain just how fucking serious it is that this sport is still in the leather helmet era. This is so far removed from
Mm,
any other sport as far as how archaic things are.
yeah.
I mean, just think about the deals that guys like LeBron get. This is a 1 year, 2 year deal at most. That's not even you're not locked up after that. Like you're bouncing. You're renegotiating and making as much money as you can on that next contract. Dudes are out here signing for pennies, dude. I mean, Tough every time. Like I started watching Tough when I got into it because it's just another thing I could watch. So why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like I feel like I'm watching fucking the utmost exploitation. Like they're in this house fighting for their dream, right? But yeah, your dream is a horrible contract that you're not going to be able to get out of. I mean, Antonio Carlos Jr. talked about this. He said in his time fighting for the PFL before he even fought for the $1 million, he made more money than he ever did in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the dream is what all these guys are chasing and
Yeah.
willing to sign for the dream, is hilarious. And when you got guys like Michael Chandler at the top sucking as much bootstrap juice as he can get, I don't see this changing at any time as soon, to be honest. I think it's going to be at least another 10, 15 until some sort of stand is made. But good luck trying to do that. They already tried it a couple times already with these fake unions they try to put together.
Yeah. So and I'm not saying anything she hasn't already said publicly, but like Haley Cowan, who's a friend of our show, she's competing on Dana White Contender Series this upcoming season. She'll be on there, and she's openly said, I mean, she is one of the top women bantamweight prospects on the planet Earth, and justifiably so. Collegiate Hall of Fame gymnast. She's a killer, man. She's the real deal. She's well spoken. She's good looking. She's super talented. Like she's all intents and purposes can be a superstar, and was offered a tough spot and said, I want to fight. Like I want an actual fight, and waited for the better part of 2 years to book a fight, hoping to get something short notice even. Took a couple fights in Invicta in the meantime, and then ultimately, uh, basically the only shot that she was going to get was through Contender Series. So took the Contender Series thing in hopes that that's a ride or die thing that works out for her. Same thing with the one fighter that we sponsor, Taylor Tombstone Johnson. He's sponsored by our show.
It's awesome.
He fought on Contender Series, and then fought in Bellator, and then fought in the PFL. Most recently, this last PFL Rising Stars thing or whatever, and got a W. It's one of those things where it was like, they want to sign you to 10-10, and he's like, I can go to Bellator, and I'm gonna get 10 for this logo on my shirt, and I'm going to get 25 for this logo. I'm going to get 50 for this one. And it's like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? Why would I have you lock me in to 10-10 for 4 fights when I can make that in one fight on sponsors alone? And you're going to tell me I can't have sponsors, but yet the octagon I'm fighting on looks like a NASCAR?
And it's gotten worse. They've added more somehow.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
Fucking criminal. And the sad part about it is I don't know how it ends, because all these things are on the forefront. It's not like these things aren't being talked about. It's not like we don't see it every goddamn week, with all these different ads that they put up. I mean, they even put ads in the middle stretch between the outside black line and the inside black line. Like you're stretching it, bro. But you tell them the reason why they can't have sponsors is because it looks too bad.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. And the fact that, honestly, I feel like the fastest way to get this shit done is to go to court. That's the fastest way, because it's clear what side of the fence they're on when it comes to the sort of employee versus independent contractor whole debacle. I feel like action needs to, I mean, it just makes me fucking depressed, because 5 years ago I felt like, hey man, like this is happening, like we're on the forefront. We got these organizations popping up trying to organize these fighters. I think we have a chance in this fight. And now it just feels like we're back in the same spot we were a couple years ago, hoping that some shit turns around.
One of the things that I think that, and I don't know what the idea looks like completely fleshed out, but one of the things I enjoy about the PFL season format is exactly that. It allows a time of action versus a time of reflection. to see what we did bad, what we can do better at, what 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 went really well, and then let's make adjustments, right? And that comes from both a production and a performance perspective. And one of the things that happens in this sport, UFC and MMA as a whole is young, but it feels old because the news cycle in this sport is so fast. It's so fast because there's a new event every weekend, and it's like that 12 months out of the year. So it's constantly rotating. So everybody gets mad about the greatest of all time argument. Well, literally, it's happening every single month. There's new fights, things are happening over and over again. Whereas, I mean, you cover other sports, like with basketball, Michael Jordan performs at a certain way through a certain period of time over a duration of a career. So for 15 seasons, he had these moments over the course of 15 seasons where there was a time for action and then a time for reflection. And then you could gauge 97 versus 96. You could gauge 96 versus 95. You don't have that in MMA. You don't have that even in boxing, but you have a little bit more of it in boxing because the guys can afford to fight once, twice a year. Mixed martial
and
arts,
negotiate.
And negotiate. Mixed martial arts, you cannot do that. You're locked into contracts and you perform whenever they say you perform. You are not a private contractor, even though they claim that you are. You're an employee. You're an employee to Zuffa LLC. Is who you're an employee to, or now Endeavor. But if we saw a format where it was season one, right? Fucking season one, and it was Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, like NBA. These are the nights of the week that games are on. You've got fights Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And you can fight. We're going to offer you 5 fights a year. And if you fight 5 fights a year, whoever's got the best records in each division, at the end of that, you are now in the playoffs for your respective divisions. And then at the end of the year or the end of the season, you have a tournament, a la UFC 14. You have a tournament. It can even take place over the course of 2 or 3 events like we see with the PFL. And then you can, okay, now we've got 6 months where we can reflect on the action. We can let new talent come in. We can let old talent roll out. And now we're going to start season 2. Something like that plays into the idea of the uniforms, plays into the idea of sponsorships, plays into the ideas of brand marketing, star making, the whole 9. You can say, oh man, last season, Michael Chandler did this. Last season, Beneil Dariush did that, blah, 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 blah. Instead, Beneil gets a crazy knockout of Jakar Close. He beats Tony Ferguson. He breaks his leg. Now he's out for a year. Nobody remembers that Beneil Dariush is good. Nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers that. He has no time to recuperate. The world is moving on without Beneil Dariush. TJ Grant was supposed to fight for a title, got a concussion, never fought again. Nobody remembers who TJ Grant is.
Eric Minor now.
Yeah. Eric Koch was supposed to fight Jose Aldo for a title and got hurt. Never fought. I mean, he fought
at 170.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but like nobody remembers. Oh, Eric Koch used to be was going to be a featherweight title challenger. Nobody remembers that.
Bro, Evan Tanner was the champ and fucking died in the desert.
And nobody remembers.
Exactly.
Which I shout out to Eric. Eric showed up at the beginning. He's going to show up at the end. I always tell people I gauge your ability to understand and comprehend and appreciate the sport based on whether the fact you know who Evan Tanner is, and you just dropped Evan Tanner. That's a mic drop moment for me, bro. So
hey,
yeah,
I passed the test. That's all that matters. And it's about time we got these awards off before we head out on this fucking awesome event that was UFC 14. Even though there was a lot of one-sided fights, it delivered. If you ask me, there's been way worse events that I've watched so far than this one. So, our fight of the night for me, I'm interested to hear yours. For me, I was this close. And I alluded to this earlier. I was this close to picking Maurice Smith, Mark Coleman, but as a whole, there's too many boring moments to do that. So I'm just picking. I'm just doing it. Daniel Bobbish versus Brian Johnston. That's my fight of the night. Because if you think about it, got the most action out of the most two-way action. That's how I describe it. So that's my pick. What's yours?
I went with Mark Kerr versus Bobbish. I thought just the idea of two, an unstoppable force, immovable objects smashing in the middle, and then like you said, the chin to the eye, man. It's just it's the weirdest finish of the night. It honestly, it's my big takeaway. It's the thing that I remembered the most from this event going into it. So
Versus Brian Johnson. Sorry, I'm just writing this in. And I remembered, by the way, so he didn't end up finishing the fight with it, but it was Tank Abbott versus Steve Jenham. He had him in that position for a while and was just wrenching that chin into his eye.
Yeah, he was doing. I remember that. Yeah, you're right.
It's a good shout. So you got Mark Kerr versus Dan Bobbish. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. My performance of the night. This includes submissions or obviously TKOs. This one was a little more tough for me. I feel like there's a lot of spots you could choose. Ultimately, I like to find ones that give you a little bit of both as far as striking and grappling. So I went with Mark Kerr versus Dan Bobbish.
Okay. And if we're going by modern rule set, if we're just going by modern rules, Joe Morea had the most dominant performance of the night.
How dare you?
I mean, if it's the modern rules, he 50-45'd him. There's no, I mean, hell, it could have even been a 50-43. I mean, it was real bad. It was real bad. I mean, that was like a 30-25, I guess, if it would have been a 3-rounder, if we want to go with that. But I will say, man, it's tough because there was a lot of, like you said, that I would love to go back and see if there were betting lines on these fights, what they would have been. I'll go Kevin Jackson over Tony Frickland because I think that Jackson, while untested in the traditional combat sense, went in there with a guy that knew what he was doing and still managed to look very dominant. So I'll give it to the Olympic gold medalist. Just add one more award to his award cabinet there. My pick for performance of the night.
I like that a lot. Now, KO of the night. I feel like we didn't have a moment like I feel like a lot of these UFC events tend to have. So this one was definitely hard for me. Now, it sucks giving all the awards for Mark Kerr, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna
That's where
go
we
with
were at, man.
yeah, I'm going with the Modi Hornstein finish because we had that brutal stretch where it went from knees from side control to just raining punches from half guard. Just a brutal finish. So that gets my award for KO of the night.
Same. I was gonna do the same thing. Yeah.
Nice.
Morty.
Hornstein. And then next up, submission of the night. We don't got many options here. There's only fucking one, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we already know that gets penciled in. I just want to say, Dale, I had a blast doing this. Thank you so much for coming on to cover UFC 14 with me. I'm looking forward to doing more stuff with you in the future. This was awesome. Please make sure that you check out all future MMA Archive content that's coming up. You can find my stuff at Twitter at Negron MMA, as well as on Instagram at Chris Negron _. Finally, make sure you follow the brand that is OTS Media Co. You can find us on all social media platforms, but OTS Media on YouTube. Drop the co and you'll find us there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, Dale, give them all the information once again where they can find your stuff at.
Anywhere, really. I mean, Punchlist MMA, we're basically everywhere. So social media, just Punchlist MMA. If you want to follow along with our picks, you can go to betmma.tips. All of our biggest thing last year, we finished the year right under 70% accuracy. We were at like 69 and some change. We were like very sad we didn't get 70%. But one of the things that our big feedback, because at the end of the year we do, what do you want to see more of? And people asked this year, they wanted more fighter interviews. They wanted all of our plays third-party tracked, so you can follow us at betmma.tips. Now, admittedly, that site is not user-friendly, and it takes me a while to do it, so it's not my first love is going on there and putting in our plays. So I do it fairly regularly, but I have missed a couple of weeks. But we do post everything to our Instagram at Punchlist MMA. All of our plays are available there. And we record and say everything out loud on an audio version of a podcast. So if you really want to fact check your boys, it's recorded for everybody to go back and listen to. Live shows are on Tuesday nights, usually at 9:30 Eastern on YouTube. And then audio is available absolutely everywhere shortly thereafter. Like I said, everywhere is Punchlist MMA. I mean, we did a good job of taking over that name. It's ours. You can't have it. So
Nice.
look and you shall find.
Awesome, man. Well, we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much. Looking forward to getting into UFC 15 next. Y'all have a good one. Peace.